Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and welcome to another episode of Page Chewing Friday Conversations. And this week, we are here with one of the most interesting people I've ever talked to, which is Mr. Bill Richardson. Bill, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Happy to. Had a great time the last time, and have been looking forward to get on here with you guys again.
So, for people who aren't familiar with your work, what can you tell us a bit about your work and kind of what you do?
Sure. So I've been a filmmaker for 30 years, and sort of wrapped that part of my life up. Still do some of that, but these days I'm writing books, and most of them are scary. The latest one that I've got that we'll talk about a little bit later is sort of an epic fantasy. Um, but I've been fortunate to travel all over the world, do lots of things, play cards with Darth Vader, you know, have some wonderful experiences. And these days, I'm trying to spend every waking and living hour writing books.
Nice. So, tell us a bit about your newest book. What is it about? How did it come to be?
Well, the newest book is called Of Demons and Dragons, and it's as short as a novel goes. Most novels are 60 or 80,000 words. This one's about 40 something thousand words, and it's about this king who is living in an age when there's prosperity in his kingdom. He's done a great job of ruling. Everything has gone easy. Everybody's happy and content. But he starts dreaming about the days of old with his father and his grandfathers, who were people wrote stories about them and sung songs about them because of their great deeds. And because everything has gone smooth during his reign, he's never had that. And he thinks he's going to die in obscurity. And then this army begins marching through the area. He's in one of these Nordic kingdoms, and it begins destroying every kingdom on its way, and his is the next kingdom. And he begins trying to figure out a way that he can take on this army that's destroyed kingdoms much larger than his. And his sort of right-hand man, a guy named Vode, tells him about this book. And it's a magical book, but it's a cursed book. And whenever you use it, whatever good it does you, it does an equal amount of bad. And so he uses the book to conjure a dragon that he hopes will help him overcome this army. And that backfires on him, and he ends up having to take on both the dragon and this army that's actually headed up by a demon king. So it's all the stuff I write is fast paced. This has got that epic sort of feel to it. It has 40 color illustrations in it, full paintings in it. And the interesting part of the origin of this story is that it was inspired by the paintings that I use in it. As an artist and a creator, you're always looking for new ways to sort of fuel your creativity. And I ran across this art that I really loved by a guy named Vuk Kostic. And I actually wrote the story around the paintings that are in the book. And normally it's the opposite. You write a story and you create the art to go along with it. So it was an unusual origin. And they're full color, full painted works. I've gotten so much good feedback about the art in the book. And these days you don't get a lot of that. It's so expensive to create books with art in it that you don't get it. And so these are just beautiful. They really add to the story, and it's the sort of thing that you just don't get to see anymore. You used to see those prints in the 70s and the 80s and that sort of stuff, but it's just become so cost prohibitive you don't get to see it anymore. And that was the other reason I wanted to do it, is I wanted to do something that was unique and a little bit different, and that would give you a different sort of experience than you get with most of the books that are out there these days.
If I can ask you a question, Bill, about that, because obviously, you're saying it came from the art to the books wise. Was it a case that you were putting your effort into the art and you kind of, as one picture led to another one, it was almost telling the story as you were doing it? Or was that somewhere where you got like 5-10 pictures through and then come to it?
It was sort of like the way a lot of things go is that there were this artist had done a series of these paintings. And I liked them. I liked the characters that I saw in them. And so I started beginning to try to formulate a story with those characters that it showed in the different paintings. And then you go back and forth. You you write some toward the art, and then you do some things to create some art that would go along with the other parts of the story, because
Right.
I've done several books like this. None of the other ones are published yet, but you can never, it's always a back and forth process. Your creative mind never completely goes along with the images, and when it veers off, you've got to figure out, okay, well, I've got to come up with images to go with that. And so it was a very back and forth process that actually I spent years on. The earliest drafts of this book were like 8 years ago.
Wow.
Wow. Long
Yeah,
time coming.
you don't realize that, you read a book that somebody wrote and you don't realize the sort of time and effort that goes into it, and especially this book. I mean, you'll read this book in 2 days, and you don't realize the amount of effort and time that a creator puts into it. And that's beside all the work that the artist did on the paintings. And all the paintings existed before I started the book.
Wow. Okay. I gotta, is it can you give us a rough estimation, Bill, about publication timelines? Like, is it in pre-order, or
It's on there's an ebook version on Amazon right now. The truth is that for a hard copy, all the supply chain problems and all the other problems of going on in China, all the printing's done in China these days. And so it's made me have to delay doing a print version of the book. And those are quite expensive. You have to do, a lot of times you'll have to do, 5,000 copies just to get started. And it's a little bit, it's cost prohibitive. That's one thing. But the other thing is that you have to store this material until you're able to, get it out into distribution channels. And sometimes it's more than a garage full.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I just added to my TBR. I was looking for it, so I just wanted to make sure that it was available. So I just.
Yeah, right now you can find it on Amazon is in an ebook version. That's the only source of finding it. And I've got an ebook version that will be out soon. I've been going through a lot of health issues, and I haven't been able to finish the ebook version. But the ebook version, there's a guy named Graham Mack that did the voice for me, and I've been a filmmaker for many years, and so I use that skill, and it's got a full, what I call a 3D soundscape to it. It has music and effects, and I say it's a movie for your ears. And so it's more than just getting the voice done. It takes, for every minute of the audiobook, you're probably spending 30 minutes on creating the soundscape and all the things that go with that. So it's a real labor intensive process. But again, I'm trying to create things that are unique, and it's usually only the really big books that are released, or maybe something that goes back to being an update of Frankenstein, or maybe the Tales of Edgar Allan Poe, that you get this kind of full sound sort of treatment to it. And I wanted my books to stand out a little bit, and I had that skill. So I've invested the time and effort and money into creating, books that have got another layer of entertainment to them.
That was awesome.
Yeah, so it sounds like sorry, PL, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it sounds like a real proper labor of love in terms of not just creating content to put out there to kind of keep your creative juices just flowing. This is more of an all-encompassing kind of thing where you're taking one piece and kind of building out from that, if that makes sense, rather than kind of just supply chain, or as you say, you kind of get one out, you get another one out, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about different kinds of media is that not everybody reads books, and not everybody listens to audiobooks. And so you're trying to find different ways to get to readers and consumers, but also I'm trying to, each way you consume this, if you read it and see the pictures, you have one experience, but if you listen to the audiobook, you'll have a completely different experience. And I really like that. It's one of the reasons I do this full sound design. And that way, each of the works has different layers and levels. It reaches different people, but also, even if you you both read one and then listen to the audiobook for the same book, you have a completely different experience. And I really like playing with that. I think it's a really fun pull to play in.
I have a couple of comments. Want to catch up? Hello, Heather. Happy Friday.
Hey,
Glad
Heather.
you can make it. Aaron, happy Friday,
Aaron.
everyone. Though it's Saturday here. Our
Hey,
friend
Drew.
Drew is here. Happy weekend.
Oh,
Carl is here. Hello, Carl.
The Irishman, good.
Colin's Corner's here. Thanks for dropping by, Colin. And Drew had a comment. I like the artwork behind you, Bill.
Thank you. I have been a collector of popular culture art basically for many, many years. Let me see if everything's backwards for me when I'm looking. This is Boris Vallejo here. This one right here is Dave McKean, who did all the Sandman books with all the Sandman covers and a lot of work since then. And I have a pretty extensive collection of popular culture art. It's one of the things I've been doing for since '99. I started in '99, and it's been one of the most fun things that I have done. Is I have art by the people that were my heroes growing up. One of them, if you collect art, the thing to do is if you can get somebody who is, the main guy in a certain art form, like, if you're looking for expressionism, or impressionism, you want a Monet. And so I've got some Kirby art. So Kirby is sort of the king of comic book art. And the thing that I spent years trying to get was work by a guy named Frank Frazetta, who's kind of a Picasso of fantasy art. And it was a character he was an artist that I discovered when I was 15. And I never thought in a million years I could ever own something that was an original piece of his art. And it took me 30 years to get one, but I worked my way up. And so just the hunt for that and the process of getting there, and then to actually have something that was a piece of work by a guy who's, unquestionably the god of fantasy art, it's just an amazing feeling.
I have a death dealer on my arm.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely. Death dealer is the boss. And I wish I had a death dealer, but unfortunately I don't have $3 million.
Yeah, we don't all have Steve money, Bill.
Well,
Yeah.
I could swing the tattoo. I just couldn't swing the.
Not only own one, I have it on my body.
Yeah, it's portable. Goes with me everywhere.
Yeah.
Natasha Stone. Hey, Natasha. Hey, everyone. I'm a school teacher, and this is the start of my February break. This is a great way to start it.
Oh, nice.
Thank you for coming by.
Nice. Happy break.
Hope you enjoy your break.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy break.
And Matt is taking shots at me. Oh, snap. It's kind of a mess. It's kind of a mess right now. I need to get it trimmed. It's getting a little.
That's okay. We can join the Scruffy Beard Club.
Yeah, I'm the Scruffy Beard Club now. The black and blue color reader. Thanks for coming by. And
hey, man.
I didn't realize. I just went and checked. He does have a channel, so everyone go and check that out. I just found it this week, so I didn't even credit me. So
subscribe to that.
Everyone, be sure and go check it out, and support it. And Natasha is a literacy specialist from K3.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Lots of teachers. We know lots of teachers. Our friend Chris here is a teacher as well.
Indeed.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Taylor's a teacher too. Our Maybe Between the Pages co-host. She's a teacher. So I just had a question, Bill. So I mean, and this Demons and Dragons sounds right up my alley. I was like, ooh. I was getting that FOMO feeling right away about your book, as our friend Taylor would say about feeling left out. So, but predominantly understand that most of the books you've written are in the horror genre. So why the departure to, something that sounds, there may be a horror element. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about your book, but a bit more about your book in terms of what you'd consider it or classify it. But why the departure from your kind of your mainstream genre of horror into what sounds like more epic fantasy?
One, I get bored easy, and I'm always looking to do different things. And then, I grew up.
Oh dear.
Oh, we lost Bill.
I didn't realize I was on mute. Yeah, he'll be back. He's leaving us in suspense. We can just wait.
Yeah, left us hanging. That's okay. I'm used to it. There you go.
There we go.
There was a ghost in the machine there. No, actually, I just teleported and. No, so I consume a lot of different kind of media and a lot of different kind of stories, and love fantasy and science fiction and horror and detective fiction and just about everything. And you know, I would love to be one of those writers that everybody on Earth reads, but you know, you'd love to be in the position of John Grisham, but I can't write the same book over and over and over and over. I just can't do that. Not to say that they're all the same, but you know, I love Harry Bosch, but you know, I don't think I could write 20 books about Harry Bosch. I just couldn't do that.
They're all the same, Bill. They're all the same. You can say that.
And I love those books. Honest to God, I read those Harry Bosch books and the Case Carbetta books, and you know, and Dave Robichaux, read those books nonstop. But I just don't think that I could really write that all the time. So I like to try different things and do different things. And that actually works against you, because you build up a following and a fan base, and they want the thing that you normally do. You know, Stephen King has been dabbling in detective fiction lately, and huge Stephen King fan, can't get into his detective fiction at all. And I don't know if that's because, you know, I just go to him because I want the one thing, or if the detective fiction just doesn't work so much for me that he does. But I just get bored easy and love so many different genres. I've got a space opera science fiction book that's one of the best things I've ever written, but I just haven't released it yet because it's so completely different. It's all humor, the whole thing. But I just get bored easy. I've got historical fiction books in the can. So I like to dabble in different things. But unfortunately, most readers, if they've came to you for one thing in the past, they want that thing again. And if they don't get that thing, even though it might be a good product, they don't enjoy it because they're expecting something else. But this book, Demons and Dragons, does have a horror element to it. The main antagonist in it is a demon. There's this demon who is in hell, and it never says that it's Satan, but basically his sort of modus operandi here is that nobody worships him anymore. Nobody thinks about the evil. They think that evil is just the evil that men do to themselves, and not that it's, you know, a personification or an actual demon. And so what he wants to do is come to Earth and create this spectacle and build this crescendo of destruction and horror, and then reveal himself as this, you know, as basically as Satan, and then people will never forget him again. And so that's sort of the horror element of this. And I also wanted to explore just some of the themes that I mentioned earlier, that you know, you take a lot of great characters from history. They might have been ordinary people, but once you put them into extraordinary circumstances, they become a person that becomes legendary. And if they hadn't had those, you know, extraordinary circumstances, that might never have happened. There's probably a lot of great men that have never been great men because they've never been in a situation where, you know, that was called for. And so that was a theme I want to explore. But the book definitely has, you know, sort of horrific elements to it. But it is still epic fantasy in the truest sense.
Do you find times that when you're writing that you have to hold back, or you have to your instinct goes one way and then you have to kind of rein yourself in? Well,
you know, it's like, if you've ever read, don't want to belabor Stephen King, but when Stephen King has written a couple of fantasy books, and there always this horror kind of comes into it. And, you know, I tend to veer that way. But try not to go so far. If you're in a genre, you want to stay true to that genre. But, you know, a lot of the greatest fantasy in the world, you know, you got Sauron and what the heavy bad guys in whatever fantasy book that you want to look at, you know, they're pretty gnarly dudes. And, you know, so there's horrific elements in a lot of the great fantasy. So I don't think it's out of character to bring a little bit of that into what I was doing too.
What strikes me, Bill, about hearing you speak about the stuff that you create, and it's not something I hear from a lot of creators, and I know a lot of this is not people not liking the idea of talking themselves up, but you seem to really like the stuff that you create and actually celebrate and enjoy the creation stuff that you've done, rather than kind of say, this is the best that I could do, I hope somebody likes it, which is kind of what an awful lot of other creators, writers, directors, etc. all say.
Well, you put an enormous amount of time into these things, and writing prose is the most purely creative thing that you can do. And I'm a visual artist. I've done film. I've done documentary. I've done paintings. I've done almost every kind of artistic expression that you can do, other than dance. But almost every one that you can do. And the thing about writing prose is it's a blank piece of paper in your imagination. And there's no barrier between those two things. And it is so purely creative and so much fun to do until you have to rewrite. The first draft is so much fun. The rewrite stuff. But it is that process of a story just coming out of you, out of nowhere seemingly, is the most joyous creative thing I've ever experienced. And I love doing it. The hard work of making it squeaky clean and good and ready for the public is a whole lot harder. But that release of that creative energy is just so much fun. And I just love doing that, because I'll tell you what, there are passages that I've written where I had no idea what was coming next, no idea, and in the moment it just materialized, and it feels magical. It literally feels magical, because you're not even, it's not even a conscious thing. It just sort of flows. And you'll hear a lot of writers saying it's the closest they've ever felt to being touched by God, because it feels like this energy comes through you and you're just a filter. And it's not that easy, but there are times when it's just a rush. It's just such an amazing rush to feel that. And you go back and read that and say, holy crap, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I totally relate to that feeling, Bill. It's transcendent. It's this feeling of and I mean, if whether or not you're a spiritual person, like I honestly feel like, because I am, it's like, well, some high end is guiding me to write this, because I'm not smart enough to make this sound this good, right? So when I write something, and I especially in the editing phase, I find I don't know about you, like it sounds like your favorite part is like that first draft feeling, right? Yeah. But I know for me in the editing phase, that's when I realize, ooh, this isn't bad. Yes, I wrote some crap too, but this part's pretty good, So, and that's the only time I allow myself to actually feel a bit of hubris about anything I do, like when that edit stage, and you're like, you know what, this so, because then you realize, okay, well, the book's almost ready. If you know that you're finding more and more parts that sound okay, you know what, it's okay, right? That means the book's getting close to being ready. But my question for you is that do you tend to throw out certain drafts? Like, you got this great idea and you're writing and you're like, it just doesn't work. I'm like, crumple, or delete, and then you're on to like the next, or maybe you come back to it, you drop it for a while, or do you do that a lot?
So I used to be, there's two kinds of writers, plotters and pantsers. The plotter is the guy that figures it all out beforehand and writes it, and the pantser just goes in there and sees what happens. And I was a plotter forever, and I've become something of a pantser lately. And I will start something having no idea where it's going to go. And sometimes I reach a total dead end, and it's totally frustrating, and it just goes over here, and maybe someday I'll figure it out. And I've become a sort of a combination. I'll plan a book so far, and then just start writing, because I think, okay, I've got enough here that I'll get there to the end. And I don't always. once read a guy who was trying to give writers advice. He said, sometimes you just have to write 100 pages and see what happens. And I thought, oh my God, you are out of your mind. Who in their right mind is just going to do that? And now I do it all the time. It becomes one of those things where I'll just, I've got a good concept and I'll tear into it and I'll get 100 pages and I'll think, I have no idea where this should go. And, you hope that you come back to it. And I've burned things in a barrel. I had, one of those cathartic episodes in a younger day when I took everything I had ever written and put it in a barrel and set it on fire. So I think all of us have done that at one point in time and just said, tabula rasa, let's just start all over again, see what happens.
Wow.
You are smiling so big. I know you have done that.
Yeah, I've done that. I'm an extreme plotter. I think to a obsessive, ridiculous, crazy level. But yeah, in the past, I've had some, when I was in my younger days, because I started actually publishing late in life. And there was stuff that I just got to the point where I was like, yep, burn it. This is just not fit for public consumption. What am I doing? This is never going to see the light of day. To be honest, I regret that now because I would have loved to actually have some of those manuscripts to compare, like if I've actually truly developed. I'd like to think I have, if I've actually progressed as a writer. Because like all writers, I'm looking for continuous improvement. I'm trying to make each book better than the next. But I would love to look back at those manuscripts of my very young self, and that I thought was, oh my gosh, this is a dumpster fire that I just chucked. That I'd like to see. I really like to compare them and see, well, was it that much of a dumpster fire, or is it my nostalgia saying that I was so horrible before? But really, we all know. We grow and evolve as people, but that's still part of my writing. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever you wrote that you just burned, Bill, like that's still part of the evolution of who you became. So I'm sure there was elements and aspects in there. If you look back now, you're probably like, well, that part really wasn't that bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, in retrospect, but yeah, I feel you. I've done that.
I'll tell you though, and this is sort of a hard truth for me. I found some old manuscripts and stuff and went back and read them, and they were horrible. They should have been burned.
Yeah, it's one of the processes we do in adult education. Actually, when we get people to do reflections at the start, the middle, and the end, and often, even though there's only maybe a 2-3 month gap between doing those pieces of writing, the very open form, there's no real structure to them. We give them some prompts. That's it. Often when people go back and are doing that reflective bit with a question whether the time and effort that they put in has been worth it, you just get them to read what they wrote themselves 2-3 months previously. And often what they all say is, I don't recognize that person anymore. The person that wrote that isn't the person that's sitting here today. And actually just that being able to evaluate and look at that piece of writing you've done beforehand just reaffirms to yourself, actually, you must be doing something right. The time and energy that you're investing into doing something is coming out in something positive that you can see with your own eyes, regardless of having outside, validation of that.
Right. And that's one of the things that makes me amazed when people are married 50 years, because you are different people all through your life. And that evolution of you has to go, that other person has to evolve in a similar track with you. And so it's amazing. If you look back at the different stages of who you were as a teenager in your 20s or 30s, you're a completely different person during those phases. And if you're a creative person, your creations are completely different during those periods of time.
I guess I like evolution. This is my third marriage, so I'm all about I'm all about the change. Happy marriage.
I'll tell you, my first marriage was when I was 57, and it is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I've gone through all these health problems, and this woman has literally kept me alive. And I can't tell you the details of how she's done it because they're disgusting. They're so gross. Cleaning wounds, just ridiculous stuff. But her name's Wendy, and she has literally saved my life half a dozen times in the last 6 months.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Wow.
Well, kudos to you. I'm happy that you found Wendy, and that sounds great. I'm happy for you.
I could never. It's just a gift. It's a gift. It's just a gift, and I'm just so grateful for it.
Yeah, it is. Shout out to my lovely wife Debbie, who's also my my business partner and manager, and keeps me basically none of anything. Nothing happens without Deb. So love you, honey. Yeah, just that Bill's talking about Wendy just reminds me. I gotta, we all have to be grateful we have partners that we
For sure.
partners, pets, whatever it is that you love. Then
and working and having a relationship at the same time together. That's a tough one right there.
Yeah, I always say that, I am someone who, it's not a lot of people, and it's more my fault, my issue. I think that I'm not, where maybe more working with me would be the issue rather than the other person. So, I'm grateful that I found someone who's able to work not only in a relationship, but at an actual entrepreneur business. And, that it's a lot of work. And Deb does a lot of work behind the scenes that nobody knows and nobody sees, but, I am eternally grateful for hers. And, and obviously Wendy's done a lot. I mean, we don't see Wendy cleaning your wounds, but obviously you're sitting here. So, you know what I mean? And it's that unsung hero element that I think is about a lot of our partners, the people we love, our pets, whoever, that keep us going, that, it's been phenomenal.
Well, and, you were talking about your entrepreneurial endeavors. People have no idea what goes into creation and what it takes to put it out. They see a product and they'll consume that product, in an instant, if it's a visual image, or in a few days, if it's a book, or in a couple of hours, if it's a movie. And I've worked on many feature films, and every one of them took 2 years of my life. Yeah. And the consumer of these things has no idea how much of your life, just in hours and minutes, and how much of your energy and your passion and everything else goes into these creative products. And which is why it's really hard when you get a bad review, or somebody dumps on something, and you've spent such an enormous amount of passion into these things. But the people who've never been through that, they just have no idea what it takes to get something out to the public.
How do you handle I'm still a novice writer for all intents and purposes. I have 2 books out. I'm writing my 3rd that's going to be published shortly. So, but you're a veteran, experienced writer, Bill. Like, I know for me, like, as I write more, I care about reviews. I care about what people think about my work. I care about how readers feel. I feel that there's that balance between, when you see a review, especially if it's the same things being said about your book consistently by a lot of reviewers, you have to pay attention. You can't be tone deaf. I think you need to, if there's some, exposure in your writing, you need to address that, and perhaps go to beta readers or your editor and say, hey, a lot of reviewers are saying this, and this is something that's consistent on my writing that, maybe, but then there's that other hand of, okay, well, a lot of it's something that could be an element that other people really like, right? So you have your audience that really, really likes this, but then some people don't, but so there's that balance between taking the feedback and actually employing it, or sometimes not in your work. But I know for me, I think the more I write, I still care a lot about reviews. I'm still, sensitive to a certain point with my writing and caring what people think. And I'm blessed that for the most part, I don't have a huge audience, but most people that read my books like them and give me positive feedback. But obviously I've had bad reviews like everybody else. How do you approach reviews? Do you still read them all? You've done film? Obviously that's a whole other ball game when it comes to critiques. Like, do you still spend a lot of time and effort looking at your reviews? Do you respond to people who write your reviews? Like, how do you handle reviews?
I do read the reviews. I do several rounds of beta reading. For the people that don't know that, it's just readers that read the books before you ever let them out. And I go through several rounds of that. And like you said, there are people that, you'll have 5 beta readers, and 2 of them will love this story and 3 of them will hate it. And so you have to rightly divide that thing. But I do read reviews, and I've gotten to a point in my life where you can. There are some people that do a review, and the whole review is about them. Even though that looks like they're reviewing your book, it's about their bugaboos or the axes they want to grind. And you read those and you discount them. And there's some people that were having a bad day, and they just decided that you were going to be the person that they crapped on. And then there's some people that put a lot of real thought and give you actually good information. And then there's some people that just said, had a great time. And, don't give you much to go on, but, they gave you a 4-star review or whatever it was. But I do read the reviews. But I've gotten to a point where I don't take them to heart. And I try to sort of filter the ones that are, there's some, I had a 1-star review on my first book, and the woman was basically upset that I wasn't Stephen King. Because in one of the media things that had went out, it said, if you like Stephen King and Dean Koontz and these different people, you'll like this. And that book was quite bloody. That book was kind of viciously bloody, and that was my intent for that book. And she was just so pissed that I was not Stephen King, and that the book was kind of R-rated. And she just tore that book up. It was one of the first reviews, so it took me forever to get the average of the reviews up to, it's like a 4.2 now. But you just get those readers, and if they're the first review and it's a 1-star review, people just go right past your book. They don't even look and see what the review is about. So reviews are this real double-edged sword. It's really hard to get them. I've been fortunate that my average reviews on Amazon are about 4.2, and on Goodreads are about 4.4. But it's, you can't let them kill your creativity. And I think that's where you were going. You can't let them be a dagger in your heart. And you just have to kind of slough that off and keep going. There are certain parts of this process, like trying to get a publisher, trying to get an agent, and all these things that just destroy you. You make 50 attempts to get a publisher, an agent, or whatever it would happen to be. And that process crushes your creativity just because you're spending a lot of time on it. You might not be getting the traction that you want. And so there's so many elements of this process that can make it harder to do what you do. And there are periods that I've gone through where I just say, I'm just going to keep writing books. I'm going to write these books. I'm going to write the books I want to write, the ones that are coming out of me, and people are going to like it or they're not. But you also, on the other hand, you can't be tone deaf to what, the feedback that you're getting. So I hear you. I hear that. It's just crushing my creativity to go through the process and to have these people that just, have no understanding of what it takes to do what you do and just put that dagger in your heart. I understand that. And so, like most things, there's something in the middle, there's taking that feedback, but finding a way for it not to, dampen your creativity and your enthusiasm to keep going.
I have a question from Natasha. Bill, what is your favorite genre to read or write?
Well, I've been a horror fan forever. I was 4 and 5 years old, and my mother and I would stay up and watch Children's Theater. And I've just been a horror fan just as far back as it goes. And my wife always says, "You're such a sweet person. How does this come out of you?" I wrote a story that's going to be in an upcoming collection that has her in it, and the name's changed and all that kind of stuff. And she said, "You're just going to kill me at the end, aren't you? I'm just going to have a horrible death at the end, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's horror. That's what's going to happen." But I think romance writers, that's in their soul. I think science fiction writers, that's in their soul. And my soul is obviously very dark and horrible because that's what comes out of me.
Somebody said that recently, said like anybody that's involved in horror just seems to be the sweetest, nicest people there are, just in show business or in the creativity world. I just watched a film last night by Norman J. Warren, sadly passed away recently, but again, like the most disgusting stuff on screen, but just seems like the most lovely man,
Well, I think part of it is that you can exercise your demons through that creative stuff, and you don't have to let them stay inside of you. But the reason that I write horror is that it is to me, it's the only genre where you get to tackle the big stuff. life and death and afterlife, and is there a soul, and is there a God, and is there evil, and is that evil a personification, or is it just the things that are part of human beings? And you don't get to do that in detective fiction or romance fiction or science fiction. Science fiction, you can get to tackle some big issues, but when it comes down to those human things that are the fundamental questions of life and humanity, you get to play with those pieces in horror like you don't get to in any other genre. And that's one of the things that I really, really love about it.
It also strikes me that horror is a genre that naturally leads people to poke fun and have fun and play with very serious things as well. So rather than just exploring them, it's a playground, very much, and everything's kind of on the table in whatever way you want to portray that or otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's different subgenres of horror where, there's no boundaries. You can go as far and wild and crazy as you want to go. And the other thing I like about horror, there's no detective conventions out there. There's actually a couple of romance conventions out there, but it's very few and far between. But there are always horror cons going on. And the reason is that there is an audience for that, even when the market's down or whatever. There is a fan base who loves that stuff, and they are loyal and they stick with it. And there's not too many genres that you're going to have. You can look it up, and there's 20 conventions a year built around horror. There's just not very many genres like that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Steve's definitely got me into reading more horror since I met my dear friend here, and and I've been loving it. Right, the little that I've read, I haven't read a lot more, but I'm planning to as the years go by to introduce a little bit more horror. And I love fantasy horror. That's always been something that I'm really starting to dig at now. And the psychological elements, especially of dark fantasy, because a lot of dark fantasy almost mimics horror, especially with the cosmic horror element. Stuff like Zemil Akhtar, Gunmetal Gods, and his books are just, like they have that cosmic horror, and it's just so good, right?
Well, there's this guy named Bil Richardson. Let me turn you on to him.
On my TBR now.
His horror, his last book, Hellfighters, was a cosmic horror book. So you should check that out.
Definitely. Okay.
And he's a nice guy too. I mean, for the most part.
For the most part.
Depends who you ask, probably.
And when. You asking when? Yeah.
Drew had a comment. Bill, have you ever been asked to give halftime speeches?
Halftime speeches. Not halftime speeches, but I have had a few people want me to do speaking engagements, which is weird. But not a halftime speech. I've had a few other little bit more strange things. I've had many different lives and done many different things. And I have had a few people want me to speak on different topics and pay me to do it, which is even weirder.
You'd be a great graduation speech, Bill.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I had an opportunity to do the graduation speech at my high school at one point, and I didn't do that at the time for several reasons. But I've always wished to get that opportunity again, because I came from one of the poorest places in America, and I just wanted people to understand that the world is so big and it's so easy, especially with all the internet connectivity that we've got, to have a friend from Ireland, and have and get to go to Sri Lanka or wherever it would happen to be. And so I just, one of the things we do as people is that we sort of get into our own day to day, and we don't stop and think about the millions of possibilities that are out there. And I've wanted. I talk to young people quite a bit in different parts of my life and different iterations of my life, and just to turn them on to, all the just amazing things. And all you got to do is just, plunk down $600, work for it, put it down, and fly to Europe and see all the amazing art. And God has blessed me. I have seen the greatest art in America and in Europe and in Russia, and just to have those opportunities to enrich your life in that way when I got to go to the Louvre, it was like going to the Vatican. It was just a pilgrimage, and I did a whirlwind. This is off the subject, but I did this whirlwind tour through Europe to see all the great art with my lovely bride Wendy. It was on our honeymoon, and the last thing that we went to on the very last day of this trip was we got to see the Last Supper. And the Last Supper is in a hermetically sealed room, and you only allowed to be in it 15 minutes a time with 15 people. And it's as quiet as a pin dropping. And when we got back on the bus and left, I just spontaneously began to weep, because on that trip, I'd gotten to see the David, Pietà, the Mona Lisa, and capped it off, and many, many other great works, and capped it off with the Last Supper. And as a boy living in, I'm telling you, the poorest place in America, to get to have those experiences, it was just revolutionary to my soul. And I preach that. That's a gospel that I preach to a lot of people. You need to have those experiences, whatever the thing is for you. If it's music or art or whatever it happens to be, take some of your life and go just immerse yourself in those things. And don't be afraid to just jump on a plane or a car and go.
Powerful stuff, Bill, because it's at the very heart of, like, I work to try and provide education in settings that there isn't any, etc. And education is a way out. But one of the things that myself and the person that I work with very closely believe is access to the arts is one of the most enriching and important parts of that process. Giving people experiences that sit outside their normal, the things that they would even consider that they would even like. But once they're in that position, how life-changing that whole thing can be. I've been in those couple of situations myself where I kind of prejudged something, went, why would I want to go do that? Why would I want to go see that or something? In that experience and come out of it and come out of a changed person, because those experiences are powerful, as you say.
Can I give you one?
Yes, sure.
Specifically. So I'm in Russia. 4.5 years after the Soviet Union fell. And, I was a Cold War baby and we hated the Russians and everything. And so it was an amazing experience just to get to find out how wonderful the Russian people were. They had been our enemies for my entire life. And so on that trip, I went to this little museum called the Pushkin. And I walked up to this painting, and I didn't recognize it at first. And it's one of the last paintings Van Gogh did in his life. And it's called The Exercise Yard. And it's a group of men walking in a circle with these stone walls all around them. And they're in a prison, and it's called The Exercise Yard. And that's these men walking in the circle to get their exercise. And the circle of men is perfect, except there's this one little gap. And there's the guy that's the focal point of the painting. And he's looking back over his shoulder at the viewer. And he has this look of immense sadness on his face. And Van Gogh painted it when he was in a mental institution just before he died. And it was one of probably the last 10 paintings he did, and then he committed suicide. Mm-hmm. And then to be that close to that painting and see just the sadness in that person's face that he had painted. And he's painting himself. That he is saying, this is what I feel, and it's killing me. And I've never had that kind of electricity happen before, where I felt like I was teleported into the mind of that human being at that time. And it's choking me up right now. But it was such an amazing experience to basically feel like you're looking into Van Gogh's eyes by looking into that painting. And it's just an amazing experience.
Wow.
And that's what the arts and travel give you. I mean, those are the two pillars I think that make people's lives expand is travel and the arts.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd have to agree that is so critical to shaping your worldview, traveling. experiencing other cultures, meeting people that don't necessarily. We're all human beings. We're all essentially the same when you break it down to brass tacks. But people who speak different languages, have worship different faiths, eat different foods than you do. I think that's so critical to development, especially emotional intelligence and understanding others. I think that's one of the best things you can do is it's expensive. It can be expensive, but if you can to travel, even if it's just outside your province or your state,
Mhm.
To another part of the country, if you can't afford to leave the country, but if you can, fly, go international, see somewhere different, and that you talk about development and who you were before is not well. I think that can really speed up your development in terms of um, the evolution of who you are when you travel and you see different places.
Absolutely. And one of the things I have found, just that Russia trip is an example. There's people that we hated and feared our entire lives. And every image you would see on television were these gritty, ugly, broken down people. And I saw some of the most beautiful people I've ever seen when I was in Russia. And just beautiful and blonde and energetic. And they loved Americans. This is 4 years after the Soviet Union, and they were just so happy to meet an American. And we had such a bonding experience. And that taught me that the stuff that you get through media is a filter. And a lot of times it's complete BS. And the other thing that it taught me was that we are 99.9% the same, regardless of your country or your race or your origin or your ethnicity or any of the other aspects. We are so much more alike than we are different. And if everybody could experience that, then so much of our problems in the world would go away.
Colin's Corner had a question, and Drew is also asking this. For the uninitiated, what is a good starting place for any of your works?
Well, it kind of depends on what you want. I think Hellfighters is probably my best book in the horror genre. The new book of Demons and Dragons, it's a short read. It's got a lot of art in it. And if you're not a big reader, it could be a good place for you to start. It deals with epic themes and sort of these larger than life characters. My first book, More Than Evil, I wrote this book to just be a bloody roller coaster ride. One of the things that they tell you is make your first sentence in a book something that catches people's attention. I tried to make every single chapter begin with a hook sentence, so that every time you read it, you would want to read the next. And I made all the chapters really short. And there's a point that you get to in that book on about page 80 when you might as well forget about it. You're going to read the rest of that book in that setting. And I engineered it in that way so that it would just be a page turner and it would just keep you just rolling down the road. And so if you like that kind of book, More Than Evil is a great book. And Hellfighters has got some really good writing in it. There's some cosmic writing in there and sort of this, looking into the universe sort of stuff. And but it's also, fast paced and fun. And then Demons and Dragons, again, as I said, it's shorter. It'll give you a flavor for that. And I hope that in about 8 months, I'm going to have a short story collection out. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is that a lot of people don't want to commit to a novel if they've never read your work before, but they will give you a story or two. But that's still in the offing. But that gives you an idea of the books that are out there. And I'll be honest, they have been very well received. And people have had a lot of very kind things to say about them. And my number one rule is don't be boring. So you're not going to go in there and think, oh, I got to read 100 pages before it gets interesting. We're going to rock and roll as soon as you sit down, and I'm going to keep you there.
Nice.
All queued up on Amazon, ready to go.
And I try to deal with some big themes in some of the books. The first one, like I said, More Than Evil, is just tear it up. But there's some big concepts that I deal with in Hellfighters, and that, like I said, that's the great thing about horror. You get to play in that sandbox where you get to play with the big questions.
That will always get me. If a book has compelling themes, I think we talked what's the last page chewing. It was with the Brothers Gwyn.
That's Gwen. Yeah.
And prose, um, compelling themes. Those are just two. Well, there's three things, but prose and compelling things are two of the things that definitely will get me. So.
Any great work works on two levels at least. There's the plot, but then there's also that subtext and those themes and those larger things that you're trying to address. And they're those are ultimately the human aspects of it. That's the things we're all struggling with. We're all struggling with, what is our purpose and what is meaning in life. And you need to have those underpinnings in there, as well as a rock and roll story.
Yeah, but ultimately it's the characters that get me. If you write good characters, I can forgive a lot of things. If those characters grab me, that's that you have me. So
I want to tell you something. Character is the most important thing in writing. It just is. Think about the books Frankenstein and Dracula. Those books to a modern reader are very difficult to read.
Yeah.
But those characters have lived forever. And so they were crafted in such a way that they have spoken to people for 200 years. And it's the characters. It's not the prose, because it's not a prose that we're familiar with. It's not the plot, because the plot is kind of clunky in some aspects of it and sort of disjointed for a modern reader. It is those characters. And if you want to write something that will live a long time, you make a great character. You make a great character. And that's the thing that is going to live beyond you.
I totally agree. That is what I love to read. That's what I try to write. I want to write a character that will far outlive me. And, I totally agree, Bill. That's so well said. So well said.
I think, not to get too deep into the craft, but a lot of the great characters have a certain amount of archetype to them. You think about Sherlock Holmes. You think about the struggle of the Frankenstein monster, who is, what is life? What is being a human being? I mean, those are very, very fundamental questions. And then the struggle against your father. So those archetypical themes that run all the way back to the Greek writings and before that, those added with a really interesting character with foibles and problems and human failings, but also somebody who finds a way to rise above that. You do that, and you got a book that people are going to want to read.
Well, based on that, I can't wait till you read your books.
Yeah.
They sound awesome.
Well, I don't think I've created an Arthur Conan Doyle character yet, but I don't have my Sherlock Holmes yet. But it's something you work for.
Yeah, we're all striving for that.
We're all
striving for that. So
well, those guys wrote a lot of other books too. It's just that one home run.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think body of work. If you are fortunate enough to live a long life, have a long writing career, I think body of work gives you the best chance to have that out of all the books you write, to have that character. If you write multiple series, what have you, standalones, shorts, I think that gives you that opportunity to have that one character that somewhere in there that people are going to go, just latch onto it.
And let me tell you something. So I've had a crazy last 6 months. I've spent 100 days in the hospital, almost died several times. I still have a situation where normally you go to a doctor and he says, well, you do this, this, and this, and you'll get better. I've yet to have a doctor tell me that. They look at my situation and they say, I don't know. I don't really know how it's going to turn out, man. We're going to keep chugging along and see what happens. And that's terrifying. I'm just sorry. That's terrifying. But one thing this ordeal has taught me is that weed out all the garbage in your life, all the distractions in your life, the things that don't matter in your life. I want to spend all my time writing and being with the people that I love. And everything else is just stuff that gets in the way. And, don't want to say this, but sort of a Renaissance person in that I'm visual artist. I've been a filmmaker. I've done documentaries and feature films and all kinds of these different things. But this process made me realize what I've been through is that what I really want to do more than anything is be good to the people I love and write books. And everything else is stuff I've just got to push out of the way.
Really simplistic, eh? Really simplistic. That
it is. Find that passion, that thing that matters to you. Nail that every day, and love the people that are close to you. And if you do that, you are going to have an awesome life.
Well
Thank
said.
you for that, Bill. Thank you. Very well said. That's I'm going to carry that with me. And as much as I think I do that, I need to up my game thanks to your inspirational words. So,
well, when you're young, you think you have forever. Time is unlimited quantity, and the further you get down the road, you realize that is not true. That all the little tangents that you go on might be fun diversions, but you're off mission, boy. Get back on that road and get where you're trying to get.
I totally agree. I think when I turned 50 and you realize you have more years behind than ahead, I'm almost 54 now. You realize that, you have to hone in, focus on, like you said, the things that are important. And we all hope to be blessed with a long life, but we never know how long or short it's going to be. And those are words to live by, Bill. Thank you for that.
I had a guy ask me once, he said, "What's 50 like?" I said, "I'll tell you what 50's like. It's like sand running through my fingers. And it's going so fast through my fingers that I can't stop it. And there's nothing I can do about that sand. It's just going and going and going." And so that sort of it was another thing that made me refocus and say, you don't know what God's going to give you. What he does give you, do what you love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really powerful stuff, Bill.
Powerful stuff.
And life is short no matter if you're 15 or if you're 50 or if you're 100. 100 years on the world is not a lot of years. So try to get yourself to that point where you can follow your passion, figure out a way to make a living doing it, and keep those people that you love close to you.
Very wise words. Very wise words.
It's a question I often ask people when I'm doing the life coachy stuff that I do. When I say, like, I don't care what age you are, and I don't mean to be morbid about this, but if you were to die tomorrow, right, what would you feel of the value of your life at that stage? Doesn't matter if you're 15, 30, 50, whatever that age is. And, think of the value of your life, and then think about tomorrow as redressing that question that you asked yourself the day before. Because if you weren't happy about it, what is it you should have done? What are the things you would like to do? And as a father, there's certain things, or as a parent, certain things play into that are outside your control, like kids being happy and all that kind of stuff that do take time. But taking that out of it, look at the other things. So it very much ties into that idea.
Absolutely. And one of the things about life is that you live it, and you get caught up in the things that you're doing and the day to day. And it's very rare. Most people go around, they're listening to something on their phone all the time, or they're in conversation, or they're doing something, and they never take any quiet, still time to just think about their life and their path and where they want to be. And most people, the only quiet time they have in their life is when they lay down to go to bed. And then all that stuff starts running through your brain and you can't go to sleep. And so I'm not saying meditate or whatever, but find 10 minutes a day to turn off everything, sit in a room by yourself, and just think about what are your priorities, and your life will get better. I promise you.
Very wise words. And Bill, I hate to, I know you have to go, but it's always a pleasure talking to you and connecting with you.
Well, I love doing this and love getting to meet you gentlemen today.
My pleasure. Wow.
It's been an honor.
This was so cool.
It's been an honor to meet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You hope that becoming an old fart at least teaches you something.
I keep telling myself that, Bill, but I don't know. I'm not any smarter than I was when I was, a young whippersnapper, and now I'm an old fart, and I'm not any. I don't know. I don't know.
Let me tell you something, man. 54, you got 30 years, man. Wear it out. You got 30 years to just wear it out. So tear it up.
Me too. Right back at you, brother.
I was going to do a reading tonight, but we've run out of time, and it's a really short piece that's going to be in the short story collection, which is going to be called "Screams All the Way Down." When it'll probably come out in September this year. But anyway, it's about, you don't know the future, and sometimes if you did know how much time you had left, it would be counterproductive. So live like you're going to live 30 years, but think like you got a year.
Yeah.
I got a year. I got a year left. What am I going to do with that year? And at the end of that year, you think, I got a year left. How am I going to prioritize for that year? And if you keep doing that, you're going to look back in 5 years and think, "Dad, gummit, man, I put out some good stuff." You know.
Well, for Bill, for anyone wanting to find you, where's the best place for people to connect with you or find more about your work?
Really, one of the places is go to my website, BillRichardson.com, and it's Bill with one L. And also check out my Amazon author page, and also there's a Goodreads author page as well. But out on Amazon, like I said, my new book is Of Demons and Dragons. It's an epic fantasy. My other books are Hellfighters and More Than Evil, they're horror books. And I got a lot of stuff that's ready to come out. So I'm going to be putting out a lot of great stuff, a lot of fun stuff. And I will never bore you. And I may even do something that will enrich your life.
Oh, really good stuff. Before we go, Chris, where can people connect with you if they're looking to find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel at my name, at Twitter at 7 o'clock Shadow, or on the Page Tune forums.
Mr. P.L. Stewart, where can people find you and tell you about all your books or find out about your books?
Usually find me beside you, Steve, and Taylor on Page Chewing, Friday Night Conversations, and our main Page Chewing interviews. The books are www.plstewart.com. The John Kingdom Saga, 2 books out. John Kingdom, The Last Atlanteans, and Lord and King about to drop in the next month or two. Social media. Sorry, I just want to pause and let Brandy.
Bill, health-wise, I'm going through something similar and really needed to hear that today. Thank you.
Well, God bless you, man. It's that old cliche about if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. It's a very true thing. And keep optimism. Keep your optimism up. It's one of the things that heals you is to keep a positive attitude, even when it's hard to keep a positive attitude. And find something funny. Go out on Netflix or whatever. Give yourself a laugh. The physical act of laughing makes you feel better. And when we get off here tonight, make yourself laugh. Even if it's not something funny, just the act of laughing creates all these hormones and everything that get released in your body, and it makes you feel better. So put some laughter in your life, and it will really help getting through.
Good advice.
Yeah, I just want to say shout out to Brandy and wishing you all the best. So for sure. Quickly, yeah. So PL Stewart at PL Stewart Writes is the Twitter. That's my preferred social media platform. And on that, Before We Go blog, where I'm an assistant editor, where Steve's also a blogger, and all the reviews off of Goodreads. And so yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Bill, I hope we can convince you to come back sometime when it's convenient for you.
Love to. Maybe in the fall. Let's just get together.
Cool. Yeah. Just let us know when, and we'll make time.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming by and for visiting and interacting with us. It's always a pleasure, and we will see everyone soon. Have a great Friday or great weekend.